Hello and welcome to the NextPowerUp review summary of Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. This is a game published and developed by Capcom. Originally came out on consoles a couple of years ago, and now it has a PC release date with the newer Dark Arisen content, as well as all of the original titles, DLC, Season Pass, the whole work stuff, all bundled into one game. And bundled into a game that is, by all AAA standards, relatively cheap in comparison to the typical $50 Call of Duty titles. So it's a relatively large game that's come to PC. A lot of people have been asking for it. I myself was relatively interested in the thought of it coming to PC, having never played it. And now it's released, and I dove into it, and I thought it was going to be really awesome. But I just want to, just do a too long didn't read thing. This is probably one of the most disappointing titles I have played so far. I jumped right into it expecting something really awesome, something amazing, something with this bizarre cross between Dragon Age and Dark Souls. But even though I don't like Dark Souls, but what I found was an awful lot of content, a lot of systems, a lot of assets that they've put inside the game, but they just really haven't done particularly well. Just to jump into the things that I really couldn't do with is the game is built quite heavily around pawns, these mercenaries that you have your own one that's persistent throughout the entire game, and you can hire two more. And I have a lot of issues with the pawns. The first and foremost thing is that they shout at you all the time, constantly, all the time. And the idea around the pawn system is that your pawn, when you complete objectives, when you explore areas, when you fight new monsters and defeat them, or just when you do quests, pawns learn. They understand how to complete a quest. They understand the best way to take down a creature. They understand the best way to find possible trips or hazards in an area. And when your pawn then gets hired by another player, or when you hire that player's pawn, they will offer you insight into how to deal with certain things as well. So let's say you're going in an area that you may not necessarily have explored before. They'll then tell you about that stuff. Except they don't just tell you about that stuff, they repeat it over and over and over and over and over again. Even when you go against the same enemy, like, there aren't that many variances of enemy. I mean, there is quite a lot of different enemies, but they're usually just the same asset with a different colour. And these pawns constantly tell you how to defeat this enemy, or what to do, or that there's something over here in this piece of the world, or it's just really annoying. And it's so badly scripted that if you take an area that a player would otherwise go from this area to that area in, if for whatever reason you end up exploring a different way around and coming from the back and back towards, so from point B to A instead, the scripts are done so poorly that when you hit each marker that knocks off each bit of conversation, it will play the conversation that was supposed to be played at the end. So let's say you go start at point B and go from point A, it'll play the last line of conversation, the second to last, the middle, the second, and then the first. Because you hit these pre-scripted events, and so you end up listening to a conversation backwards. And the whole interaction with the pawns is just infuriating, and it's just badly done, and it needs a lot of work, and it just caused a lot of irritation because they wouldn't shut up. They literally wouldn't shut up. Even when I'd faced an enemy before, they would not stop shouting things. And it's not just a case of, every time I killed an enemy and then went onto the same enemy, they'd say the same thing. They were saying the same thing on the same enemy within 10 seconds of saying it, and it really grinded my gears quite a bit. So that's just the early bit. The core concept of this game is combat. You spend 90% of the time in combat because, to be honest, there's nothing else to do. And the combat is really slow, really sluggish, extremely bland and boring. You've got heavy attack and light attack. You have skills attached to all three buttons for the left button and 3 skills for the right button. Except even with this minor throw-up of skills, it's still bland and boring. The blocking mechanic is extremely sluggish and slow. In Dark Souls, the dive and the blocking is quite critical to the core concept of the game. In this game, it does try to hint towards the difficulty of Dark Souls, especially in the initial tutorial bit, which isn't explained. Blocking is the timing for blocking either is the input on my Xbox controller, which shouldn't be that bad, but blocking is really crappy. You have to do it well in advance, and there's just no smoothness. There's no if you've played Street Fighter, you'll understand that you know, when you press a button, you want it to happen like that. It's all about those quick frames and about the efficiency. But there's none here. No efficiency whatsoever. It's just a blur. It's just, oh, I'm gonna block. There we go. Have a block. You know, it's just annoying. And as I mentioned on the tutorial thing, the first thing you get that happens is you're dropped into this area with some guy in a shield and a sword and some other soldiers, and you go through it and you kill some stuff. Then you get put up against the giant boss and you attempt to kill that boss but die, and then you get an achievement for dying at that bit, as if it's some kind of, oh hey, we're like Dark Souls, ha, yeah, bro fist. And it doesn't explain why that happened. And then you get dumped into the character creation. So despite the fact you've just done something, you then go into the character creation, and then you start the game, and then you do the tutorial, the actual tutorial. So I don't know what this bit at the beginning is for, or why. It's pointless, as far as I can tell. And the tutorial does go through a lot of things. There are a lot of systems in this game, an awful lot of things to cover. And the thing is, the tutorial is stretched over about an hour, and it slowly trickles information, except it just doesn't explain a lot of key critical systems. So it doesn't show or tell you how to do, how to craft potions. You just randomly come across that when you access your stash in the main city. It doesn't tell you how to unlock skills, how to set skills, unless you go to the inn in the city and you magically come across it. It doesn't tell you about your stash, which you use in order to combine ingredients to make potions. It doesn't tell you about the quick travel stones. The map doesn't show you points of interest at all, even if you've been next to them. It will show you like caves and things, but let's say you're in a town, and if you go up every single street, it will not tell you what any of the NPCs do on the map or the mini-map or anything like that. Instead, you have to talk to every single individual NPC and just randomly come across one that happens to be a trader, or randomly come across one that happens to sell potions. And only when you've discovered them, and actually not even discovered them, talk to them, do they start appearing on the map, which is pointless. So I'm not quite sure why they did that, because it was really irritating. And I think there's loads of NPCs I've missed in the first city because I couldn't be asked, to be quite frank. And the other thing is, by the time you get to the first main city, you don't receive anything in terms of the main storyline whatsoever. I mean, I did search pretty hardcore. I spoke to every NPC I possibly could on the way between there and everything else. But it's literally like, oh, hey, here's a story. Hour later, oh yeah, don't worry about that story. It's just an accessory as part of this game, and you don't really need to be bothered about it. And after like 20 hours, I think I had randomly found my way back into the story again. But as soon as I had accessed that piece of lore, the story there was then immediately forgotten about. And the story's crap anyway. I mean, I didn't particularly get into it because I never really saw much of it, but from what I could tell, it was completely uninteresting, and just mildly gave you a reason as to why you could summon other people's pawns. The quests, well, the main quest is nowhere to be seen, and the side quests are all the same. Like 90% of the side quests are kill 45 rabbits, or kill 3 ogres, or kill 20 deer, and you shall receive 500 gold and 500 experience. They're all like that. Literally every single quest is kill this many things, and yeah, that'd be cool. Thanks, here's some experience and gold. None of them are remotely varied. There's like a very, very select few amount of quests that are slightly different, but even then they are go there, kill these monsters, yeah, thanks for doing that. And they all boil down to the same repetitive crap. And it's really quite annoying, and it's just grindy nonsense, and it's all the same. The monsters are all the same, like you'll come across wolves several hundred times because they have different fur or they're a different color. You'll come across harpies that are all basically the same thing but with a slightly different color texture. You'll come across ogres, which are all completely the same. Cyclops, which are basically ogres model blown up slightly. And you know, the tactics that these pawns supposedly say you have to use just don't come into it, because you can jump on an ogre's back and beat him around the head if you want, and you might do some mild extra bits of damage, but you may as well just sit there and dodge constantly and just swipe at his feet, because you will then end up depleting your stamina bar if you waste your time climbing on him, and then you'll run out of breath, and then you'll get stuck in the same position by breathing heavily, and then you'll probably get killed. So, you know, for the most part, the enemies are really bland, really boring, completely copied and pasted and repetitive. There's only a couple of enemies which do require a little bit of variation in terms of how you approach them, but they're so few and far between, it's just like, you know, what's the point? I can see you've tried, but you've just not tried enough. And the other thing is that not just the enemy variants in terms of looks and the way you deal with them, it's the way that the leveling system works. So you can just go here, there, and everywhere. As you please, and because none of the enemies are scaled, certain areas just have enemies that are of a certain level, and you must deal with them or run away. And it's really annoying because when you're in the starter area, when you're like level 5 to 10 or whatever, you can go up against like level 30 enemies just by accidentally moving into an area that's slightly different and getting absolutely annihilated and having to restart at the start of the last checkpoint, which is miles away. And traveling's really, really boring because you can only run for like 15 seconds because your stamina bar runs out. And when that runs out, you have to stop and wait for your stamina bar. Or if you're like me, you'll eventually perfect on getting it to the last pixel and then just stopping and walking the normal way. Travelling is immensely boring, and that's only hindered by the fact that the world is fucking massive, absolutely enormous. And for the most part, if you don't randomly come across the quick travel system, fast travel system, or whatever, you'll spend most of your time running across the wasteland, really, really bored and irritated. The quick travel system just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Literally, it's just such an arbitrarily developed system that's just, there are better ways. It's like the system was designed to be annoying specifically on purpose. So the way the fast travel system works is you can sometimes unlock these stones outside towns, or outside main particular areas. Except you can't go to those stones and travel between other ones. You have to go to the black market and buy these waystones or whatever the hell they're called. And they're one use only. So you have to stock up on loads of them and then you use those to travel about. What's the point? I mean, why? There is a piece of DLC that's bundled with the game that gives you an infinite waystone, so you don't have to constantly buy them. But why? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. It's like they said, oh, we're going to be different because... why not be different? Why not make it arbitrarily different because we want it to be unique? But it's just bad. It's just bad. It's really irritating. It's annoying. You can finish a quest and go, time to go back to town, save and quit. Except I can't save and quit in this area, so I have to teleport home. I've got to use either these stones that I potentially haven't bought or just run all the way back, and it's just crap. I mean, honestly, I mean, some people, it may not matter to them that much, but it was one of the stickler things for me. The other thing is with the pawns, your pawn obviously levels with you, but pawns you've hired don't. And that's really, really, really annoying because not only do you have to deal with these stones in order to get back to town, if you've leveled up maybe 5 levels and decide to take on a new area that's slightly higher level, the pawns that you've hired are completely useless because they don't level up with you. And most of the time they just end up being meat shields that you constantly have to revive. So you then have to go back to a town or go somewhere to find one of these stones, release the pawn, which then puts you in this stupid thing about you have to like do an Amazon review of this pawn by giving it stars and confirming it, and the menu's all, it's just a pain in the ass. And I just completely ignored this feedback system by just spamming the A button so I could get rid of the damn things and get some new ones. Just because, why bother? It's such a waste of time. It's so annoying. I can kind of understand that another player wouldn't necessarily want their pawn leveling up. But would it be so hard to not level the pawn up for the person who owns it, but for them to keep the experience? I mean, is that not something that went through their minds so that people didn't have to fuck about quite so much? The vocation system is never actually explained as well. Obviously, the vocations are just another word for classes in this game, because it has to be different again. And you start off with 3 options. You can be a ranger, a wizard, or a warrior or whatever. They're called different things, but at this stage I don't care. And you are never told that what these vocation ranks do or what you're supposed to do when you level up, unless you go to the innkeeper and then talk to him about vocation. And what happens is you can then unlock extra weapons if you change your vocation, because you can unlock advanced vocations. So instead of being warrior, I chose to be like a magical shield Templar person. And the same goes for the other people. And when you choose these vocations, you can then unlock new skills. You can then unlock new weapon efficiency, so you can buy new weapons. But none of that is explained. You have to unlock these skills and passives and augments and then apply them. And then the game never actually tells you how you use these skills. I just randomly discovered that pressing left button and right button does it. So, tutorial again. What the hell are you doing? But even with this variation of vocations unlocking new weapons, there's just not that many weapons to choose from. If you choose a specific vocation, you have like 3 or 2 to choose from. except of those three, they aren't different but all equally as good or have different trade-offs. You have crap, middle, good but slightly expensive. So you only really have one choice of weapon. And once you get to the next city, 1, 2, 3, all crap, only have one choice of weapon. And the black market system doesn't make any sense whatsoever either, because all of the items are just bad. I went to the black market. I had the best piece of armor from the main guy who sold armor and weapons. I had upgraded all of them to at least level 1, couple to level 2, 1 or 2 to level 3. Went to the black market and thought, oh wow, this stuff costs like 500,000 gold. It must be really awesome. And it was all terrible. It was all worse than the gear I had equipped. It cost 5 times as much in almost every case. I bought some, tried to upgrade it, thinking maybe if I upgrade it, it'll be better. And it was all completely useless. And so when I had to release one of someone else's pawns and offer them a gift because reasons, I just gave them all this black market armor because it was completely useless and crap to me and was a total waste of 500,000 gold. So don't understand the itemization system. It just seems like a backward system. The game is relatively pretty from afar. There are frequent occasions where you'll be standing on a hill and you'll just look into the vast horizon, and the mountains and the planescapes are all really quite nice to look at. But then when you get really close to things, you'll very quickly discover that the textures are not that great. It's sort of 2010 style graphics, not fantastic, not terrible, but at the same time not amazing. And if you just look at the VRAM usage figures on the performance analysis, you'll very quickly realize why the VRAM usage figures are so low. The game is big on exploration. If you go around, you just explore random things. You are rewarded quite heavily if you go around and explore things. You'll see really awesome dungeons that are hidden, like the hidden waterfall dungeon that I mentioned in the review, which is really quite cool. It looks pretty. It was well designed, well made. It was really awesome. It had a nice end boss area, and it was really cool to look at. So the exploration is the key reason for playing this game. It's just a shame everything else is awful. Obviously, there's absolute masses of content. Literally, I guarantee you there's probably 100 or so hours of content, if not more, simply because everything's just been mashed together in this one game. Whether or not you can stand to play it for longer than I did is entirely another matter. The upgrade system for weapons and armor is a nice addition. I feel like if it didn't have that, I probably wouldn't play the game at all, because itemization is so poor and bland at the moment. And the control options are fantastic. If you press the spacebar at the main menu to get to the main menu, and then randomly press a button on the controller, all of the keybinds will immediately switch and all the prompts will switch, and vice versa. Control options are fantastic. Performance is absolutely awesome. It's a brilliant port. It's just a shame that the content is, in my opinion, pretty poor. It is probably one of the, I won't say worst, but one of my least favoured titles, at least in the last 6 months. I came into this thinking it's going to be a wonderful game. I came into it thinking I'm really going to like this, and I've left not wanting to play a single minute. So, that's just my opinion. The review's my opinion as well. I'm sure I'm going to upset an awful lot of Dragon's Dogma fans by saying that, but, I've got to say what I see, and what I see is pretty poor. So go ahead and check out the full review in the link below, as well as the performance analysis. Join us on Saturday for our next Week in Gaming episode, and of course next week on Thursday for our next review, which will hopefully be better than this one. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.